Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles. Joyce and I have been married for 5 years now. We have a 4-year-old son, Caleb, who's the light of my life. We met back in grad school. Well, I was finishing my master's in economics, and she was still in undergrad, majoring in kinesiology. It was one of those whirlwind romances. Late nights in the library, pizza and wine on weekends, long walks across campus talking about dreams and futures. She had this fire in her, so passionate about fitness, about helping people. I was drawn to that, still am, to be honest. After we got married, I initially decided to quit my job. It made sense at the time. Joyce had just landed a full-time role as a personal trainer at a local gym, and we both thought it would be good for me to stay home with Caleb for a while. I figured I'd take 6 months, maybe a year, and just be present. But when Caleb was about 6 months old, it became clear that Joyce's income alone just wasn't cutting it for the three of us. Bills started piling up. We were dipping into savings more than I was comfortable with. I remember the night I brought it up. "Hey, babe," I said gently while she was folding laundry on the couch. "I've been running the numbers, and I think I might need to go back to work sooner than we planned." She looked up at me, her brows knitting together. "What? Why?" "I just don't think we're going to stay afloat on one income," I replied. "It's not about you, Joyce. It's just, I think 2 incomes would take the pressure off." She put the towel down inside. "So you don't think I can handle it on my own?" "What?" "No, that's not what I'm saying." I sat down next to her. "Joyce, you're doing great. I just don't think it's fair to you or Caleb if we're constantly stressed about money." Her eyes got glossy. "It just feels like you don't believe in me." "I do believe in you. This isn't about capability. It's about stability. There's a difference." She was upset for a while after that. For weeks, it felt like every little thing I said was being measured, weighed against that moment. But eventually, she saw the bigger picture. I think it helped when she realized that me going back to work meant she could take some time off and spend more time with Caleb. That softened things, but there was a downside, a big one. Once I started working again, everything at home still landed on me. Joyce said that because her job was more physically demanding. She was on her feet all day, lifting weights, training clients. She didn't have the energy to do housework. I spent all day sweating my butt off. She said one night when I asked if she could at least do the dishes while I gave Caleb a bath, "You sit in an air-conditioned office and type. You can handle a few chores." I didn't argue. Not then. But it stung. I'd come home from work exhausted after a long day of meetings and spreadsheets, and the kitchen would be a mess. Toys everywhere. Laundry undone. She'd be sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone or watching TV. "I thought we agreed you'd help with some of this," I said once, picking up a pile of dirty clothes from the hallway. "I was too tired," she replied without looking up. "I had 3 back-to-back clients today." I nodded. "Yeah, I had 4 meetings, 2 presentations, and I haven't sat down since I walked in the door." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you seriously comparing your job to mine?" "No, I'm not. I'm saying both are tiring. That's why we agreed to split things." But she wouldn't budge, and I got tired of fighting. We went around in circles again and again over dishes, laundry, vacuuming, even who would pick Caleb up from daycare. The arguments became so predictable that I could write the script before they started. I'd get frustrated. She'd get defensive, and somehow it always ended with her accusing me of not understanding how hard she worked. So, I just stopped. I gave up trying to make her do her part. I started doing everything myself. Laundry, dishes, bath time, groceries, cleaning, organizing Caleb's toys, setting up his playdates. I figured it was easier than dealing with the constant pushback. Easier than walking on eggshells. Easier than trying to explain how exhausted I was, only to be told that it didn't count because my exhaustion was mental, not physical. I started doing everything myself just to avoid the regular arguments. The stress had been eating away at me slowly, like water eroding rock. At some point, maybe a year and a half ago, I started smoking again. Just a few cigarettes a day at first. I'd Sneak out onto the porch late at night after Caleb had gone to bed and just sit there in silence with the smoke curling up into the dark sky. It was the only time I felt like I could breathe. When Joyce found out, she laughed, not in a playful way but in this mean, dismissive kind of way. "Oh wow," she said, leaning against the kitchen counter with that smug look on her face, trying to prove how stressed you are now. "You going to start drinking whiskey and brooding next?" I didn't even respond. There was no point. She always thought everything I did was some sort of performance. I don't know if she ever truly believed I was drowning in it all. The last couple of years were just a blur of constant motion. Work, errands, housework, Caleb, more work. And in between all that, Joyce's comments, digs, little jabs that left bruises, even if she claimed they were just jokes. She never lifted a finger in the kitchen, but would still mock my cooking. "This pasta is always overcooked," she'd say, pushing her plate aside. "You ever heard of al dente? Hard to get it perfect when I'm throwing things together between folding. Laundry, vacuuming, and prepping Caleb's lunch," I muttered once. "Well, maybe if you didn't stress yourself out trying to be a superhero, you'd manage better," she shrugged. It was always that same tone, like I was somehow choosing to be overwhelmed, like it was my fault I couldn't do everything perfectly. I stayed, not for her, for Caleb. I couldn't imagine not seeing him every day, not being there for bedtime stories, for scraped knees, for his sleepy morning hugs. I knew what divorce did to kids. I saw it in friends growing up, and I didn't want him to carry that weight if I could help it. But last year I cracked. I hired a maid. Her name was Martina. She came 3 times a week and did the deep cleaning. I never had time for. I paid her for my own salary quietly without making a fuss. For a little while it brought some peace to the chaos. Of course, Joyce found a way to make even that feel like a failure, so now you need a maid. She smirked when she found the invoice on the counter one day. "Wow, can't even keep your own house clean, huh?" I clenched my jaw. I work full-time. I cook. I raise Caleb. I just needed some help. She snorted. My dad worked full-time and fixed everything around the house. He never needed a maid. You know, Uncle Ray raised 3 kids and still managed to keep their house spotless when Aunt Kelly had surgery. I stared at her. And did they have wives who pitched in? You know, helped out. She just laughed, shook her head. "Relax, Henry, it's just a joke." That line, "it's just a joke," started to feel like a slap every time I heard it. A way to excuse every cruel thing she said. A get-out-of-jail-free card for being inconsiderate. Sure, we had good times now and then, moments where we laughed together, shared a movie on the couch, watched Caleb play in the yard, but those were like flickers of light in a cave, brief, fragile, easily extinguished. I'd been thinking about divorce for months, quietly, secretly. It felt like treason every time I thought it, but I couldn't help it. The resentment had built up like static in the air, just waiting for a spark. That spark came last week. I came home from work and found Joyce in the kitchen humming. She was actually cooking, which immediately made me suspicious. There were plates already set on the table, wine glasses out, and the smell of roasted vegetables filling the air. "What's the occasion?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door. "Oh," she said casually, "Jordan's coming for dinner." I blinked. "Who?" "Jordan?" she repeated, turning to look at me with a bright smile. "My ex from high school. We dated forever, remember?" I ran into him at the store. Turns out he just moved into the neighborhood. My throat went dry. "And you invited him over?" "Yeah, figured it'd be fun. He's single now and just settling in. It'll be good to catch up. You didn't think to run this by me first?" I asked, my voice tight. She waved a hand, dismissive. "Oh, come on, Henry, it's not a big deal. It's just dinner." But it was a big deal. She had invited her ex-boyfriend, someone she dated for 6 years, into our home for dinner without even asking me. That dinner was the final nail in a coffin I'd spent years hammering shut. Strike one was her inviting Jordan in the first place. She didn't ask, didn't even give me a heads up. I would have said no, and she probably knew that, but she didn't care. I knew who Jordan was. You couldn't not know if you'd been married to Joyce. Her friends loved bringing him up, always in that irritatingly nostalgic way. Oh my God. Remember, when you and Jordan got caught kissing under the bleachers, Jordan used to write her poems. Can you believe that? Even after we were married, they'd chuckle and tease her about it, and she never shut it down. She always laughed along, but none of that prepared me for how she acted when he showed up at our door. She opened it with this exaggerated little gasp like she was in a rom-com. "Jordan, you look exactly the same. Well, better actually." I watched her lean in for a hug that lasted a bit too long. Her hand lingered on his arm. She was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. "Wow," Jordan said, stepping inside with a bottle of red wine. "You weren't kidding about your place. It's beautiful." Joyce smiled at him, then glanced over her shoulder at me. "Henry keeps it tidy. Thanks to that maid he hired," she said with a smirk. I forced a tight smile and reached out. "Hey man, I'm Henry. Nice to finally meet you." "Jordan," he said, shaking my hand. "Joyce told me a lot about you." I didn't ask what. Dinner was awkward from the start. Joyce poured him a drink and asked him to sit at the head of the table. My seat, the one Caleb always called Daddy's chair. I said nothing. I sat across from them and tried not to stare. She laughed louder than usual at everything he said, touched his wrist when he told some story about parenting. She kept using that high-pitched voice she reserved for flirting, that fake little gasped laugh combo. And I sat there chewing dry roast chicken, trying not to choke on it. Strike two. But strike three, that was during dessert. She had ordered some ice cream and was serving it. She turned to Jordan. "Henry's not much of a cook, you know. We survive mostly on pasta and eggs." "Nothing wrong with that," Jordan said politely. "Oh, but you'd hate his pasta," Joyce continued, chuckling. "Always overcooked. I've had to start calling it mushy mystery stew." I clenched my jaw, but I smiled and said, "Unfortunately, Thomas Keller could not find time to train me." Jordan's laughed at that. Joyce did not like the response. I guess she never expected me to say anything. "And don't even get me started on his smoking," she added with a little mock shiver. "Honestly, I think he only does it to look stressed. Like, ooh, look at me, I'm the tortured husband." I responded with another smile. "Jordan here is a full-time stay-at-home dad. 2 daughters, right? Cooks, cleans, does school drop-offs, and still finds time to grocery shop for fancy French dinners." I glanced at him. He looked mildly embarrassed. "Wow, your wife must be earning a ton. I wish I could say that for me." That embarrassed both of them. "Oh, come on, Henry. Admit it. You are nothing compared to Jordan. I wish I had a time machine that got a laugh from Jordan." And that was it. I felt something inside me snap, not in a dramatic table-flipping way, just a quiet, permanent break, like a window slowly cracking under pressure until it finally gives way. I didn't say anything. I just smiled. I knew what she was trying to do. Humiliate me and try to make me leave my job and become dependent on her again. Well, job versus A of a wife, job wins. I cleared the table, washed the dishes in silence while they talked softly in the living room. I could hear Joyce giggling. The sound grated on my nerves like nails on glass. When Jordan finally left, Joyce gave him a hug at the door, long and lingering. "Come by again sometime," she called after him. I dried my hands and waited for Joyce to return to the table. "Sit down, Joyce. I guess we need to talk." She shrugged and sat down. "Your pathetic attempt to humiliate your husband in front of your ex-boyfriend has been very successful. I must congratulate on that." She tried to say something, but I raised my hand to shut her up. "No, you're going to listen. You have made a mockery of this marriage. I am going to ask you a very simple question. Are you ashamed of your husband? And don't give me a psychobabble answer like Kamala Harris. It's a yes or no answer, so stick to it." She got angry and said, "I was just trying to lighten up the mood. It was a joke. Why are you taking it seriously? Don't be a jerk." I still kept looking at her. She started and said, "What are you trying to do? Cut that out." I did not take my eyes from her. She kept avoiding my gaze and never answered my question. I got up and said it was a simple yes or no answer. Don't blame me for anything that I do after this. She got pissed and walked out of the room. She went to bed not long after. I stayed, downstairs like I always did. I usually stay up to clean and decompress, so it wasn't suspicious. Once I heard her snoring faintly from our bedroom, I moved quickly. I packed a duffel bag with clothes and essentials. Then I packed Caleb's things: pajamas, his stuffed giraffe, toothbrush, a couple of books, some snacks. I tiptoed into his room and gently woke him. "Hey, buddy," I whispered. "Want to go on a little sleepover with Daddy?" He nodded sleepily and wrapped his arms around my neck as I carried him out the door. I called the cab and waited outside in the cold, my breath fogging the air. When it pulled up, I buckled Caleb in, climbed in next to him, and gave the driver the address to my parents' house. It was nearly midnight when the cab pulled up to my parents' house. The porch light was on. Mom must have seen us from the window, or maybe she never went to bed. Either way, she opened the door the moment we stepped onto the porch. Her eyes went wide. "Henry." I tried to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, I just stood there holding my half-asleep son in one arm and a duffel bag in the other until my face crumpled. The tears came fast, hot, and ugly, and I couldn't stop them. Mom rushed down the steps and pulled me into a hug, careful not to jostle Caleb. "What happened?" "Oh, sweetheart. Come in. Come in." My sobs must have scared Caleb because he started, crying too. A confused, groggy wail as he buried his face into my shoulder. "I'm sorry," I whispered, trying to soothe him while gasping for breath. I had to bring him. I didn't know if she'd even notice he was gone. I didn't trust her tonight. Dad came out too, looking like he'd just thrown on a robe. "Jesus, come inside, it's freezing." They didn't ask questions right away. Mom took Caleb from me, cooing softly to him while Dad helped me with the bags. We got him settled in the guest room, and he was asleep again within minutes. Once the door closed behind them, I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, trying to string the mess of thoughts into something coherent. "I left her," I finally said. "I left Joyce." Mom sat beside me, quietly rubbing my back. She invited her ex-boyfriend over for dinner. I continued. "Didn't ask me. Didn't even tell me until he was already on his way. Then spent the whole night flirting with him, mocking me, making me feel like trash in my own damn house." I looked up at them through blurry eyes. "And this isn't new. It's been years of this, of her tearing me down, mocking my cooking, laughing at my stress, acting like I'm some useless slob who should be grateful she even tolerates me." Dad gave a slow, heavy nod. "You never told us it was that bad." I didn't want to admit it was that bad. They let me talk until I ran out of words. When I finally crawled into bed that night, I felt more exhausted than I'd ever been, but strangely a little lighter too. The next morning, I was barely out of the shower when my phone rang. Joyce. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before picking up. "Hello. Where are you?" Her voice was breathless, panicked. "You're not here. Caleb's not here. What the hell is going on?" I paused, then said evenly, "I left. I'm at my parents', and I'm filing for divorce." There was a beat of silence. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Henry," she said like I just threatened to move to Mars. "Cut out the drama and come home. This isn't funny." And just like that, something in me snapped again. "I'm not joking, Joyce." I snapped. "I'm done. I've been done for a long time. You're being ridiculous. You're overreacting." "What?" "Because I had Jordan over. We just had dinner. For God's sake." "No," I said, voice rising. "Because you've mocked me for years. Because every time I tried to hold things together, you were right there chipping away at whatever shred of dignity I had left. Because you don't help, you don't care, and you sure as hell don't respect me. You act like I'm some pathetic loser who should feel grateful to be in your presence." She scoffed. "That's not true. You said, I only smoke to show off how stressed I am." I shouted like it's all performative. You laughed when I hired a maid because you couldn't be bothered to help with anything around the house. You think as if I'm less of a man because I don't make sole or iron shirts like your ex-lover does. Jesus, Henry, I was joking. No, Joyce, your jokes aren't funny. They're cruel, and they've been killing me slowly every damn day. There was silence on the line, and then the tone shifted like she suddenly remembered she had something else to be mad about. So that's it, she hissed. You just leave in the middle of the night with my son and decide it's over. You've been planning this, haven't you? You've been lying to me. I stayed for Caleb, I said coldly, not for you. Oh, how noble. And now you're trying to play the victim. I'm not the one playing the victim, Joyce, I said through gritted teeth. You are. You always do. You can't take responsibility for anything. You push me to my limit. Every single day. And this last night was just the last straw. The morning after I left, my phone nearly exploded. Text after text, message after message from mutual friends, co-workers, even Joyce's cousin. All of them had one common theme. Think about your family, Henry. Don't throw it all away over a few jokes. Come on, man. She's just got a sharp sense of humor. This isn't worth destroying a home over. It felt like they were reading from the same damn script. I kept replying over and over again, trying to be calm. There's a lot more going on than you realize. You weren't there. You don't know what it's been like behind closed doors. This isn't about one dinner or a few bad jokes. But it didn't matter. Most of them didn't want to hear it. They'd already made up their minds. So, out of frustration, I finally posted something publicly. I didn't go for drama. I just told the truth. I explained how Joyce had been tearing me down for years, how she would undermine me in front of others, criticize me for things she never even tried to help with, and constantly compare me to other men, especially Jordan, her ex-boyfriend, who somehow still had a seat at our dinner table and in her heart. I explained how exhausted I was being a one-man team in a two-person marriage, how I tried to communicate all of this to her for years, only to be brushed off or met with sarcasm and indifference. It felt good to say it, not to lash out, but just to be heard. Some people backed off after that. A few even messaged to say they were sorry for assuming things, but of course, Joyce saw it too. She texted me later that night. If these were your problems with me, why didn't you ever tell me? I stared at that message for a long time, stunned at the audacity of it. I had told her so many times over dinner, after arguments, during calm, quiet conversations where I'd practically begged her to stop mocking me in front of our son, to stop rolling her eyes every time I offered to cook, to stop treating me like a roommate she merely tolerated instead of a partner she respected. But none of it ever landed. It was like talking to a wall with a smirk painted on it. I replied, I told you just didn't listen or didn't care. That must have struck a nerve because suddenly her tone shifted. Please, Henry, I'll change. I swear. Just give me one more chance. I was stupid. I didn't know how much I was hurting you. Then the group chat invite started. Friends we hadn't talked to in months suddenly wanted to check in. She even got our wedding officiant, her college friend, to reach out. It all felt so fake, so coordinated, like a marketing campaign built around guilt. Stay for the kid. Stay for the marriage. Stay because she says she'll change. I told her she was being manipulative. Straight up. I didn't sugarcoat it. I couldn't afford to anymore. It was the third time in a single day that another mutual friend had reached out to me with some version of, "She's really trying, man. Just hear her out. Don't throw everything away." So when she texted me again, yet another, "Please, just come talk to me. Please don't do this to our family," I called her. I needed to say it with my voice. She picked up almost instantly. "Joyce," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "you need to stop dragging our friends into this." She was quiet for a beat. Then, she said, "I'm not dragging anyone. They care about us, Henry. They're just trying to help." "No," I said, "you know exactly what you're doing. You're pressuring me. You want me to feel outnumbered, cornered, like I'm being selfish for finally choosing myself after years of being ignored. "That's not true," she said quickly. I didn't ask anyone to pressure you. I just told a few people what happened. And they wanted to reach out because they know how important this is." I exhaled hard, trying not to snap. "Joyce, do you hear yourself? You told your version of what happened. You left out everything I've been telling you for years, and now you're letting our friends guilt-trip me into staying in a marriage that's been eating me alive." She sounded exasperated. "So I'm not even allowed to talk to my friends now. What? You want me to just crawl into a cave and be alone while you blow up our entire family?" I paused. "This isn't about isolating you. It's about you respecting the space I need. You didn't take me seriously until I left, and instead of listening, really listening, you're trying to control the narrative." "I'm not," she snapped. I made mistakes, okay? I messed up, but I didn't think it would lead to this. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did, Joyce," I said, quieter now, and when I finally reached my breaking point, instead of sitting with that, you scrambled to make sure I'd feel bad enough to stay. That's not accountability. That's manipulation. Silence. "Then I'm scared, Henry. I don't know how to fix this." I swallowed hard. "That's the thing, Joyce. You can't fix it with other people's voices. You can't fix it by painting me as dramatic or overreacting or ungrateful. You had years to listen. You didn't. So now I'm done being the only one fighting for this." She didn't say anything after that, just a quiet sniffle on the other end. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But I knew deep down I was right to say it. I had to, because if I let her rewrite this moment to suit her comfort again, I'd never get out. And I was done sacrificing my sanity just to keep up the illusion of a marriage. What she was doing was manipulation. That much was obvious. She didn't like the reality of what was happening. So she was trying to crowdsource enough guilt to trap me into coming back. Thing is, I've given her chances. Countless once. Every time I forgave a joke that cut too deep. Every time I swallowed my pride after being embarrassed in front of our son or friends or neighbors, I gave her another chance. I wanted to believe she could be better. I really did. And maybe she could fake it for a while. Sure, she might actually try. Cook a few meals, say nice things in public, lay off the teasing, but I know her. That mask wouldn't last. Eventually the resentment would bubble back up, and I'd be back where I started, feeling invisible, disrespected, alone. And I'm just tired. Tired of doing all the heavy lifting. Tired of being a single father despite having a wife. I don't want to waste any more years waiting for someone to become the person they promised to be. More than that, I don't think Joyce is the right role model for our son. I definitely don't want my son growing up in a household where behavior, like Joyce's, is normalized. Where passive aggression and belittling jokes are considered normal. Where emotional neglect is just a Tuesday night. I stayed with her for so long thinking it was for my son's sake, but now I'm leaving her for the same reason. 2 days ago, I filed for divorce. Today, she was served. The fallout was immediate. She called me less than an hour after she got the papers. Her voice was tight, almost shaky, like she was trying to stay composed but couldn't quite get there. "What the hell, Henry?" she hissed. "You filed for divorce without even talking to me." "I have talked to you, Joyce," I said calmly. "You just never listened." "Oh, come on. You're really doing this after everything we've been through?" Her voice cracked, then shifted into anger. "And what the hell is this about full custody in the house?" "I think it's fair." I told her I've been raising our son practically on my own. You barely engage. I'm the one who cooks, cleans, handles his routines, his homework, his appointments. Oh my God, you're really going to act like I'm some deadbeat? She cut in, voice rising. "I'm not acting, Joyce. I'm explaining. There's a difference. You've been emotionally unavailable, and I don't think you're capable of taking care of him full time. I'm not denying your visitation. You can still be a part of his life, but full custody is what I think is best for him." She let out this short, disbelieving laugh. "This is insane, Henry. You're being completely hysterical. You didn't even give. me a chance to respond before blowing up our entire lives. Hysterical? I repeated, jaw clenching. Joyce, I didn't come to this lightly. I've been thinking about it for months. Do you have any idea how hard this has been for me? I've spent so long second-guessing myself, hoping you'd change, hoping things would get better, and they never did. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Not angry, not sarcastic, just quiet. I didn't want a divorce, Henry. She said, I know I'm not perfect, but I didn't think it would come to this. I softened just a little. It wasn't just the jokes, Joyce. It was the whole pattern, the disregard, the constant comparisons. The way you made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I was a joke even in my own home. But full custody, she whispered, and the house, you're trying to take everything. I'm not asking for alimony, I reminded her. I just want stability for our son and that house. I kept it running. I poured everything I had into making it a home. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm trying to protect him. Another pause, and then out of nowhere, I heard her sniffle. A soft, broken sound I hadn't heard in years. Joyce. She didn't respond, just more sniffling. Then a breathy, almost inaudible, I can't believe you're doing this. She broke down crying. Not the performative kind. Not the angry tears or crocodile sniffles I'd brace myself for, real crying. Deep, guttural, silent, shaking crying. It was jarring. Joyce isn't an emotional girl. Pretty obvious from everything I've said. Seeing her cry at all is rare, but hearing her like this, it felt like watching a statue crack. It was a very big deal. She was sobbing, not just crying. Sobbing. The kind that makes your chest ache just hearing it, even when you know you're doing the right thing. Through her tears. She choked out. I never thought I could lose you, Henry. I guess that's why I took you for granted. I just never imagined you'd leave. There was so much rawness in her voice, I almost didn't recognize it. Joyce had always been composed, even distant. But this was something else entirely. I know I messed up, she said, words tumbling fast, now like she was scared I'd hang up before she could finish. I know I haven't been the wife I should have been, or the mom, but please give me just one more chance. Just one last shot to prove I can be better. I can be better, Henry. I'll go to therapy. I'll stop with the jokes. I'll listen, really listen. I swear. I closed my eyes, pressing the heel of my palm against my forehead. My throat felt like it was made of sandpaper. It's too late. Joyce, I said softly, you should have said that a year ago or two, or even last month. I didn't know how bad it was. She cried. You never told me it was this bad. I did tell you, I said, the exhaustion seeping through so many times. You just didn't want to hear it, and I can't go back to that life again. I won't. She broke again, louder this time, heavier, and I just sat there on the other end of the line, clutching the phone, listening to her fall apart. It was one of the most uncomfortable, surreal experiences of my life, consoling my soon-to-be ex-wife as she sobbed over the decision I'd made. The one I had to make. I never thought you'd do this, she said eventually, voice. I'll never forgive myself if our son suffers because of this, and I don't think I'll ever forgive you either. I took a breath, kept my tone as steady as I could. Joyce, this isn't permanent. He's still little. We can revisit the custody agreement later when he's older. We can figure out what's best for him, not for us. This isn't about punishment. It's about stability, about doing the right thing for our son. She was quiet for a few seconds, then click. She hung up. No goodbye, no warning, just silence. I sat there staring at the call screen for a long time. It felt weirdly symbolic, like that click had sealed something in stone. For the next couple of hours, nothing happened. No texts, no calls, just silence. And then the flood began. First it was Sarah and Mike, then Ryan, then Elaine, then Jess. One after another. Texts, missed calls, voice messages, all variations of the same thing. "Henry, you're making a huge mistake. She's trying, man. Isn't that what you wanted all along? You owe it to your family to reconsider. This isn't just about you." Some of them were kind, sympathetic. Others, not so much. Cold-hearted, selfish, destroying your home over pride. At first, I tried to reply, tried to explain that there was more going on than they knew, that this wasn't just about a few jokes or hurt feelings. But it didn't matter. Now it's not just a few people. It's practically everyone we know. It's been one hell of a week. I've barely had time to breathe between work, taking care of my son, and prepping with my attorney. We've been compiling every possible piece of documentation ahead of the mediation: doctor's visits, school notes, daycare drop-offs, even grocery receipts. The court appointed a mediator to help sort through both the divorce and the custody case. And honestly, the divorce stuff doesn't faze me anymore. It's the custody part that keeps me up at night. Everyone keeps saying I'm being unreasonable, trying to get full custody, but they don't see what I see. They weren't there for the daily grind, the late nights, the emergency room visits. They didn't sit through the school meetings when Joyce forgot to show up or answer the "where's mommy" questions with vague, gentle deflections. Joyce wants to parent when it fits into her schedule, when it's convenient, when she feels like it. That's not how kids work. And now she's suddenly playing the devoted mother card on social media. She's been posting filtered pictures of our son, my pictures that she took from old shared albums, captioned with things like "missing my baby boy, so much it hurts." Mom life. Unfair. One of them was a shot of him asleep in my arms after a long day at the park, which she wasn't even there for. What pissed me off more wasn't the post, it was the comments. People were eating it up. "You're such a strong mama. Hang in there. He loves you so much. It's wrong. What's happening? You deserve better." One of our mutual friends, Jen, shared the post with a caption that said, "This woman has more love in her pinky finger than most people have in their whole bodies. She doesn't deserve this." I didn't respond. What was the point? She's welcome to visit anytime she wants. I've never stopped her. I even texted her once last week and said, "He keeps asking about you. Want to stop by after daycare?" She replied 3 hours later with "busy tonight. Maybe later this week, but sure. Post away about how I'm keeping her child from her." Yesterday she called. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Hey," she said, "just wanted to ask, does he still like those dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets?" I blinked. "He hasn't eaten those in over a year." "Joyce," I said, "he's into the astronaut ones now. You know, the little rockets and planets. We've been making space lunches every Thursday." "Oh," she said, sounding caught off guard. "Right. I saw those due at the store and thought of him." She didn't mean any harm, but it landed like a punch in the gut. This isn't about dinosaur nuggets. It's about not knowing your kid anymore. My attorney keeps reassuring me that we have a strong case. She says judges care about patterns, consistency, and that I've been the primary caregiver for a long time. We've got charts, dates, attendance records from school meetings, pediatrician receipts, even a statement from our daycare provider. "Your role in your son's life is well established," she told me yesterday, flipping through a binder. "The fact that you've done all this while holding down a full-time job says a lot. Joyce's participation has been, let's just say, minimal. And then there's the house. Her lawyer's arguing it should be split 50-50 since it was a wedding gift from both sets of parents. Never mind the fact that I've been the one paying for everything. Repairs, property taxes, new roof, water heater, the whole damn list. I even remodeled the kitchen myself when we couldn't afford a contractor. But none of that matters to them, not if it doesn't benefit her. What's eating at me the most, though, is the way people who should know better have started chiming in. Out of nowhere, I get a DM from one of Joyce's gym clients. "Hey, I don't mean to intrude, but I just wanted to say that Joyce is really hurting. She talks about your son all the time. She loves him so much, I hope things work out." Another one. "You were lucky to have someone like Joyce. She's always been so upbeat and kind. One of the most genuine people I know, right? Because being cheerful during a spin class means you're automatically a good wife and mother. The most surprising part of this entire circus has been my father-in-law. Out of everyone, mutual friends, co-workers, acquaintances from the gym who've decided Joyce is the next mother, Teresa. He was the last person I expected to reach out with anything but judgment, but he did. He called me on a quiet Thursday evening right after I'd put our son to bed. I was still sitting on the couch staring at a stack of court documents trying to find the motivation to keep reading. The phone lit up with his name and for a second, I almost didn't answer. I figured it would be the usual subtle guilt tripping, a plea to reconsider some version of your tearing the family apart. Instead, I picked up and after a pause he said, "Henry, I just wanted to say I understand." His voice wasn't angry or confrontational. It sounded tired, weary even. I sat up straighter. "You what?" "I understand your decision," he said again. "You're doing what you have to do." I didn't know what to say to that. I just stayed quiet and let him talk. "You know," he continued after a moment, "when Joyce's mother and I were first married, we had similar issues. Not identical, but close enough." I stuck it out. I thought it was the right thing to do. There was a pause, a long one, and then softly he added, "But I can't say it was the happy thing to do." That silence after his words hit harder than anything he could have said. I could hear the regret in his voice, the kind that had been fermenting for years. He didn't need to spell it out for me. We talked a little longer, mostly about logistics, how our son was doing, how the custody stuff might go. Before we hung up, he said, "Don't let anyone make you feel like a villain for wanting peace." I thanked him, hung up, and sat there for a long while, letting the weight of that conversation sink in. It made me think of my own parents. They've been incredible. My dad's practically become my financial advisor, helping me get every document in order. The man loves a spreadsheet, so he's in his element, even if he's worried about me. And my mom, she's been an angel. She watches our son whenever I have to meet with my lawyer or run to the courthouse or deal with whatever crisis of the day pops up. She makes him little snacks shaped like stars and planets and asks him about school with real interest in her voice. Sometimes I just sit and watch them together, my son giggling while she reads him a story. And I wonder how I ever tolerated the emotional emptiness I felt in my marriage. Because that's the truth, isn't it? I was lonely even when we were still under the same roof, sleeping in the same bed, planning the same vacations. I don't think I fully understood that until I saw what real support felt like again. But I'll be honest, some nights the stress is unbearable. Everything stacks up. The noise, the pressure, the doubts. And last night, it all just crashed down on me. I was alone in the kitchen, papers scattered on the table. My son asleep upstairs. The silence felt heavy, like something was pressing down on my chest. I opened the junk drawer. There was a lighter inside, wedged between an old keychain and a roll of tape. Without even thinking, I grabbed my coat and stepped out onto the porch. My hand was already halfway into my pocket when I realized what I was reaching for: a cigarette. I hadn't smoked since I moved out. It hit me all at once. I used to light up to escape, to numb myself, to cope with how invisible and unwanted I felt in my marriage. I smoked not because I liked it, but because it gave me something, anything, to do with the ache. I stood there for a long time, the cold biting my fingers, the lighter still in my hand, and then I put it away because I wasn't there anymore. It's strange how clarity comes to you in these moments. Joyce has been relentless in the last few days. Every night, without fail, I wake up to a long text message from her. They range from furious accusations about everything I've done, wrong to desperate, tear-filled pleas for another chance. The latest one, though, took the cake. She went on about how she's been watching cooking videos and learning how to do laundry properly. The tone of it, as though things were supposed to be proof that she's changing. I had to put the phone down and just breathe for a second before responding. Or in this case, not responding at all. It's almost comical, really, if it weren't so damn tragic. At 28, she's only now realizing that these are basic life skills that should have been learned years ago. It's frustrating because it feels like a poor attempt at redemption. Too little, too late. I can't even bring myself to laugh at it. As if the late-night texts weren't enough, some of our mutual friends have started sending me screenshots of Joyce's private social media posts. She's telling her version of the story, painting herself as the devoted wife who was blindsided by a husband who never communicated his unhappiness. The comments are full of people calling me heartless and suggesting that I might be having a midlife crisis. Midlife crisis. At 35, I stared at that comment for a while, trying to decide if I should respond. I didn't because honestly it was absurd. But it was a gut punch nonetheless. The people who have no idea what's been happening behind closed doors are throwing out these labels in judgment. And I'm supposed to take it. I had to take a step back. My attorney had already advised me not to engage in any of it, to just document everything but not respond. She said that this kind of public manipulation will only help my case in the long run. It's hard to remember that when it feels like I'm being attacked from all sides, but I try. I really do. The only thing keeping me grounded through all of this is seeing how much more relaxed our son has become since we moved into my parents' house. He's sleeping better, eating better, just generally happier. He still asks about Joyce, of course, but it's not with that anxious edge he had before. Back when we were all living under the same roof, I could see the stress in him. It was there in the way he would freeze up when we argued, or act out when things got too tense. I used to think I could shield him from it, but I realize now that I wasn't protecting him as much as I thought I was. He still misses her, but I'm hoping he'll be okay. I'm doing the best I can for him. Next week, I've got my first mediation session scheduled. My attorney's been prepping me for what to expect, but I can't shake the nervousness. Joyce's lawyer has already made it clear that they'll fight hard against my request for full custody. It's going to be a battle, no doubt. Still, with every passing day, I feel more certain about my decision. I know it's the right one. Living with my parents has reminded me what a supportive household feels like. For the first time in years, I'm getting proper sleep. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night stressed about everything that's going wrong. And honestly, I'm starting to remember who I was before I got so caught up in trying to make a relationship work that never really had a chance. I've been putting in all this effort, trying to save something that was already broken. I lost myself in it, trying to please someone who never truly appreciated what I was doing. The next few weeks are going to be crucial as we start the formal proceedings. I'm bracing for what's coming, but I'm also starting to feel stronger than I've felt in a long time. Today, Joyce came to visit us at my parents' house. To be honest, I was dreading the encounter. We've got our mediation session scheduled in a few days, and this was probably our last informal meeting before everything gets serious. I'd been expecting it to be another confrontational visit, especially given all the emotional text messages she had been sending me lately. But what happened today completely shifted my perspective on a lot of things. When I opened the door, there stood Joyce. She looked different, more put together than I've seen her in years. Instead of her usual gym clothes, she was wearing a proper dress, something I hadn't expected at all. She even had a small gift bag for our son in her hand. I stood there momentarily taken aback by the change in her appearance. But what really struck me was her demeanor. There was no defensiveness, no hostility. The kind of confrontational attitude I prepared myself for was completely absent. She didn't walk in like she was about to make some emotional plea or attack me for the custody battle. Instead, she was calm, almost normal. She made small talk with my parents, something she rarely did, even when we were married. She asked my mom about her garden, and then, to my surprise, she started discussing local sports with my dad. It was awkward. Yes, awkward in the way that meeting your ex in a neutral setting always is, but it was also strangely civil. No yelling, no accusations, just polite conversation, like we were strangers reconnecting after years. After about 15 minutes, she turned to me and asked if she could see our son. The way she asked wasn't demanding or entitled. just gentle. She'd asked for permission. That simple shift in how she phrased it made me pause. It was such a departure from her usual behavior that I didn't even respond right away. Our son was in the living room playing with his toys when Joyce walked in. The moment he saw her, his entire face lit up. "Mommy!" he shouted, dropping his toys and running straight into her arms. I stood by the doorway watching them. The way he ran to her with such excitement, like she was his world all over again. It hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. There was a deep sense of longing in him, a need that was clear as day. They sat on the floor together, Joyce pulling out the gift bag she brought. It was a puzzle. Spaceships. Immediately, I knew she'd been paying attention when I mentioned his new space obsession during our custody paperwork. That simple detail caught me off guard. As they began putting the puzzle together, I noticed something that stopped me in my tracks. Joyce wasn't controlling the activity like she usually would. Normally, she'd try to direct our son's every move, getting frustrated when he didn't follow her instructions exactly, but this time she let him take the lead. She sat back and let him do it on his terms, quietly encouraging him, not forcing her own agenda. She asked him about his day, about his friends at daycare, about his favorite parts of living at Grandma and Grandpa's house. She listened to every word he said, her eyes focused on him with genuine interest. It was almost foreign to me seeing her engage with him like this. Over the years, I've never seen her show this much real attention to our son. Sure, she'd give him gifts or make sure his basic needs were met, but the kind of emotional engagement she was showing right now, that was new. At one point, our son started talking about how I make his sandwiches in the shape of rockets. "Daddy makes rockets," he said excitedly. "They're my favorite." Normally, Joyce would have made some sarcastic comment about my culinary skills, probably a dig at how poorly I made those sandwiches compared to her perfect Pinterest W-worthy creations. But instead, she just looked at him surprised. "Really?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "How does he do that?" Our son, of course, was thrilled by the question. He jumped up, running to the kitchen to grab his lunchbox and bring it back to her. "I'll show you," he shouted. For the first time in ages, Joyce didn't brush him off or act like she already knew better. She didn't make an excuse or a joke. Instead, she bent down to his level, asking him to teach her how to make the sandwiches. It hit me hard. This moment was something I'd never expected to see. It wasn't about the sandwiches, of course. It was about her actually wanting to connect with him in a way that wasn't about control or being the perfect mother. She was asking him to show her something he enjoyed, something he'd taken pride in doing with me. I watched them for a while, and for the first time in ages, I didn't feel resentful. I didn't feel angry or bitter. I felt hopeful. There was a real possibility that maybe, just maybe, Joyce was starting to understand what it meant to be a mother. Not just a provider or a caretaker, but someone who truly listens, who engages, who learns. She had made her mistakes, but in this moment, it felt like she was trying. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that change was possible. They spent the next 20 minutes in the kitchen with our son seriously teaching Joyce the art of rocket sandwich construction. It was such a simple moment, yet it felt significant. The real turning point came when our son asked when he could see her again. The hopeful look on both of their faces hit me hard. Joyce didn't make any demands or try to manipulate the situation. She just looked at me, waiting for my response. Without thinking, I found myself nodding. We talked briefly at the door before she left. For the first time in a long time, there was no defensiveness or bitterness in her voice. She admitted she'd been a bad mother up until now and acknowledged how much she'd missed by not being more involved in our son's life. Seeing how much he'd grown and changed in such a short period made her realize just how little time she'd spent with him. She told me she was ready to do whatever it took to be a better mother, even if she couldn't be a better wife. She mentioned that she'd hired a nanny to help her learn proper childcare techniques and had started attending parenting classes 3 times a week. She showed me the certificates on her phone, not to boast, but simply to show that she was serious about this. She didn't try to convince me to come back or make any big promises about changing. Instead, she requested that I reconsider the full custody arrangement. She suggested we work out a schedule that would allow her to prove she could be a responsible parent while also making sure our son's routine wasn't disrupted. After she left, I called my attorney. I told her I no longer wanted to pursue full custody and that I was open to discussing a joint custody arrangement. My attorney reminded me of all the documentation we'd gathered showing Joyce's previous lack of involvement. But I explained that I needed to give her a chance to be a better mother, even if she hadn't been a good wife. The look of pure joy on our son's face today made me realize that, while ending my marriage is the right decision, I don't have the right to end my son's relationship with his mother. Especially now that Joyce is finally showing real signs of wanting to step up and be the mother our son deserves. The divorce negotiations have begun, and surprisingly, things are going much smoother than I expected. Joyce and her lawyer have been surprisingly cooperative, which I suspect is her way of showing remorse for her past behavior. We've started discussing the custody arrangements for our son, and while everything is still informal and verbal at this point, it's clear that we're both trying to move forward in a way that puts our son's needs first. We're considering having our son spend half the month at my place and the other half at his mom's. That's actually the arrangement we're following right now, and our son is set to move in with Joyce in a couple of days. At first, I was anxious about this plan, but Joyce has really stepped up. She's asked her mom to help her out, which has been a huge relief. Despite our marriage ending, Joyce has been incredibly supportive, more so than some of my closest friends. She calls me daily to check in and even sends me pictures of the bedroom she's setting up for our son. The housing situation has also been resolved more smoothly than I anticipated. Joyce agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds 55/45 in my favor, recognizing the extra work I've put into it over the years. Her lawyer actually suggested this compromise, which shows they're genuinely trying to be fair. Joyce has also enrolled in a co-parenting course, something the mediator recommended, though it wasn't required. She's been sharing her progress with me via our new co-parenting app, which helps us track schedules, appointments, and our son's activities without needing to directly communicate. The most surprising development has been how Joyce has handled our son's space obsession. She's transformed the spare room in her apartment into a mini planetarium, complete with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. She asked me for our son's bedtime routine and has been practicing it with her mom to ensure consistency between both homes. I still see our son every few days during Joyce's time, as neither of us believes it's good for him to go 2 weeks without seeing either parent. We've worked out a schedule where we alternate weekends, and on Wednesdays, the parent who doesn't have him that week will do dinner. The mediation sessions have been productive so far, focusing more on practical co-parenting strategies rather than rehashing our marital issues. Joyce has been actively involved in the process, taking notes and asking relevant questions about things like school schedules, healthcare decisions, and holiday arrangements. We've established clear communication, boundaries, no more late-night texts or social media drama. All communication now goes through our co-parenting app or our lawyers. Joyce voluntarily deleted her previous posts about our situation and made a final update stating that we're working things out privately for the sake of our son. Her mother has been an unexpected blessing throughout all of this. She's not just helping Joyce learn to parent, but also mediating between us when things get tense. For instance, last week when we disagreed about preschool options, she arranged a meeting with both sets of grandparents to discuss things calmly, and we ultimately found a solution that worked for everyone. Our son seems to be adjusting well to the new arrangement. He's excited about having 2 rooms and 2 sets of toys. We're trying to maintain some consistency by having his favorite stuffed animals travel with him between homes. He stopped asking when we're going home and now talks about mommy's house and daddy's house without showing any distress. The financial aspects are being handled professionally through our lawyers. We're setting up a joint account for our sons, expenses with clear guidelines about what each of us will contribute and how the money can be used. Joyce suggested this herself, wanting to ensure transparency in our financial responsibilities as co-parents. Looking ahead, we have a detailed parenting plan in place that covers everything from education to medical decisions. We've even included provisions on how to handle future relationships. agreeing to meet any potential new partners before they're introduced to our son. I know there will still be challenges ahead. This is just the beginning of our co-parenting journey, and bumps along the way are inevitable. But for the first time since all of this began, I feel genuinely hopeful about our ability to put our son's needs first and work together as parents, even though we couldn't make it work as spouses. What matters most is that my son is happier than I've seen him in months. Joyce and I both understand now that being good co-parents is more important than holding on to past hurts. I'm grateful that we found a way to move forward that puts our son's well-being first while allowing both of us to maintain meaningful relationships with him. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.